right, and we're back for WDSU News at 6 o'clock. Told you it would be a quick break. Here we are, and it is 6 p.m. on a Friday in New Orleans. 9 hours in now to this removal process of the Robert E. Lee statue in Lee Circle. There was a crane there that had some difficulty actually getting up to the statue earlier this morning. A cherry picker that is there right now trying to work to get this statue down from its pedestal. We're not sure what the holdup is. Your guess is as good as ours, but we do know that Robert E. Lee is firmly standing in the position that he has been in since 1884 right now.
And the blue strap around his upper body firmly strapped there as well. They're working to unbolt or unscrew the bottom part right there. We've seen them in action the last couple of hours here. We do have team coverage for you on the removal of the last Confederate monument for you. So we've got Casey Ferrand, Travers Mackle there, and Tammy Eswick. Let's start with Casey Ferrand.
Hey, Sella, we actually have been standing here waiting for the removal along with the crowds that have been staged here throughout the morning and afternoon. They've grown and grown, and we've watched as the crowds have kind of been calm throughout the afternoon. And I want to bring in a guest here who's been with me also this afternoon. This is Malcolm Suber, a community activist here in New Orleans, who's been an integral part of the Take 'em Down movement. Talk about seeing this right now. What are your thoughts as we look at the monument?
We are indeed overjoyed. This is a culmination of decades of struggle to get rid of these white supremacy monuments, and we're here today to celebrate. This is a great day for the city of New Orleans, for the people of New Orleans, and we're saying goodbye to 4 hated symbols of white supremacy. And we're in Take 'em Down. NOLA, of course, are committed to taking them all down, so the work is still continuing.
And I know earlier this afternoon we heard one of our anchors, Scott Walker, was talking about this monument has actually been removed once before, and you were telling me that was back in 1953.
1953.
Talk about that time.
The statue was listening. It was tilting, so they had to take it down to underpin the column, and so they did it in 53. They took it down for 2 or 3 weeks, and they put it back up.
And you've been here through today and the Jefferson Davis removal as well as the Beauregard removal at City Park. Anything different you feel today?
Well, I think the whole city has had to pay attention to this struggle. And most people have come to the conclusion that we were on the right side, that we advocates and Take 'em Down took the right path. And people are here to share our joy at taking us down.
But there is a sense of sadness among some in the community who feel that these are landmarks in the city. These are pieces of history that will no longer be standing.
But we will not let anybody tell us this is history. History is the actions and movements of people in a setting. Statues are not history, they are representations of history. So no, we're not moving history, we're moving the symbols of white supremacy. And they have no history except that they were put up for spiteful reasons and to re-emphasize white supremacy, and they should be gotten rid of. And this is a struggle fundamentally over who controls the public lands in this city. And we're saying that these things are on public property and the public no longer embraces what they represent.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thanks so much for being here with us.
No problem.
And again, we've been waiting here throughout the afternoon. The city was expecting to have this done by 5 o'clock. Now, an hour later, still waiting for the monument to be removed. But we're seeing it lifted up right now. There you see the monument coming down.
Casey, thank you so much for that. We have a very good view of the statue now hoisted out of the pedestal, lifted up, and you can see it's dangling there from the crane through the straps that have been fastened around the upper body of the statue.
And you heard the crowd erupt in cheers. There were a few moments like that during the day today when there was a movement toward the statue with the hook or the straps or the crane itself or the cherry picker. There were numerous cheers throughout the day, but none louder than the one you just heard when Robert E. Lee was lifted from the pedestal that he sat on since 1884.
Quite a galvanizing moment for the crowd down there, especially for those who are for the removal of this statue. And you can see it slowly, carefully. The crane is moving it away as it dangles from the tip of the crane. It's slowly moving away from the pedestal there. And barricades are up, so I'm hoping that people down there are standing far away so nobody gets injured. injured in this process, but you can see it's slowly moving away from the pedestal.
And this is what the city and Mayor Mitch Landrieu have waited for quite some time. The last of the 4 Confederate-era monuments removed from its resting place. And this was the biggest, the heaviest, the biggest challenge that the city has faced in removing a monument. And like we've mentioned, it started at 9 this morning. Originally, we were thinking yesterday, we had heard that maybe 2 a.m. was the start time. That was pushed back to 9 this morning through a work day. They said 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And now about an hour and 5 minutes later, than they initially thought they would be done, the statue is off its pedestal and moving to the waiting flatbed truck below that will take it away.
Gosh, folks down there with their cell phones out, I'm sure capturing a moment of history there as the statue slowly goes down from the 6-story high pedestal. This column apparently is 6 stories tall. It's got a spiral staircase inside of it. And as you mentioned, Scott, this is the final fourth Confederate monument to be removed in the city. A monumental moment for the city, but definitely one of history unfolding right before our eyes right now.
Looks to be about a third of the way down as it is eased down by the crane operator ever so slowly. A little bit of a wind out there today. Doesn't seem to be too big of an issue with the statue as it sways ever so slightly on its venture down to the ground. But certainly, I imagine a sigh of relief for the people involved in this project so far, because it did come off the pedestal cleanly and is almost back down to the ground now in one piece and undamaged. And
yesterday we saw them removing the streetcar lines, and they suspended the streetcar service around Lee Circle, and barricades were up for safety reasons. So this process can go smoothly, and as you can see, it is slowly coming down. And that last hammering action we saw, Scott, remember when they were trying to unbolt the screw at the bottom part? That was the final process of it, and then they were able to lift it up with the strap and the rope around the crane and bring it down. So now it's at the last leg, the last bit of it before it reaches the flatbed or the truck, the trailer they have parked right there at Lee Circle.
And the cherry picker, you could see, was moving down in unison with the statue to the left of it. The 2 men on that cherry picker, I'm not sure if they swapped out during the day. I didn't notice the cherry picker come down and people replaced the ones who were in it. But if it was the same duo that was in there all day, they were up there a long time, and it was a hot day, and they put in a lot of work to get this statue wrapped up in the right way so it would come down safely and properly.
And initially we thought they were going to have to lay it horizontally to the side or to the back of the statue, but I see now it's just vertical up the statue as is.
I thought the weight would flip it to its back based on the way that's wrapped, but obviously science wasn't my thing, and gravity and all that. He's coming down just like he sat on top of the pedestal.
That's what I thought too initially. I thought that would be the easiest way to get it down on the flatbed, is to lay it down on its side. But as you can see, it is erect and standing up straight, and those ropes fastened tightly and securely around the upper body of Robert E. Lee, and it is now slowly lowered down to the ground and towards the truck or flatbed they have there. There it is. There's that trailer they've got parked on the grassy area of Lee Circle, and it is now on the flatbed, ready to be taken to its destination.
This monument was dedicated back in 1884. It was formerly Tivoli Circle, right there at St. Charles Avenue, where St. Charles Avenue meets Howard, and it was full of dignitaries at that dedication on February 22nd, including former Confederate President Jefferson Davis, 2 daughters of General Lee, and Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard. Jefferson Davis and P.G.T. Beauregard had their monuments moved immediately preceding this one.
Removal coming after years of divisive battle and debate on the issue of Confederacy, racism, and slavery. And today, the final piece of the 4 statues that were slated as public nuisance by the city of New Orleans, Mayor Landrieu's administration, coming to an end and coming down today on this Friday. The mayor yesterday, as he released in his press release, encouraged people to come out and exercise their First Amendment rights, but do it peacefully and respectfully. During the removal of Jefferson Davis and Liberty Place monuments, we've seen a boisterous crowd out there with flags and posters up, 4 people detained during one of the former Confederate monument removals. PGT Beauregard monument removal just earlier in the week, we saw one man with a little bit of an injury to his face. We have not seen anything of that magnitude today so far. According to Casey and some of our reporters on the scene, they've been respectful. Protesters have been respectful and quiet for the most part today. Also, we've seen vandalism on the PGT Beauregard monument earlier this week, and the mayor also condemning any type of vandalism or defacing public property, strictly prohibited, condemning that action, and that you will be charged if you do so. Also, parking enforcement officials are out there as well, so just be careful if your traffic note for you too. If you're out there, you know, traffic is closed, obviously, but parking enforcement people are out there too, so don't park illegally.
And one would think that with the removal of the statue, that traffic would not be far from reopening coming through Lee Circle now. And I wonder what we call Lee Circle as of tomorrow.
That's a good question.
Interesting question.
That's a good question.
As we look at this and look at the statue that sat on its pedestal since 1884 come down, we can look back at the protests in this round as opposed to the protest from when it was first announced that these statues would come down. The protests at the beginning were it was a lot louder. It got a lot more violent. I remember the protests at Lee Circle with spray paint and windows being broken in the downtown area. People marched through the streets and there was some violence and people were injured. This time around, it hasn't been as violent. The protesters have been calmer despite a few arrests along the way. It has been a calmer scene as these monuments were actually removed at the back end of this.
Yeah, and today we also heard the mayor speak at 3 o'clock justifying his reason for bringing down the monuments, and Travers Mackle was there. He joins us live now with more on the latest. And also, since we spoke to you last time, Travers, that statue, Robert E. Lee statue, is down now.
Well, I'm listening obviously as well there, Sella. The mayor called the Confederacy the cult of the lost cause. He says this is the right thing to do. No matter when you do it, there's never a good time, he admitted. And he said, look, he knows he's at the end of his term, but this is definitely the right thing to do. He gave a 23-minute speech, a passionate speech about how New Orleans can turn the page and focus on the next 300 years as one of the most racially diverse cities in the country. He says it's something that New Orleanians should embrace moving forward. And let me read you a quote. We're going to let you listen to the mayor in a second, but he said something very important, speaking of generals like Robert E. Lee, PGT Beauregard, and the President Jefferson Davis of the Confederate States. He said, it is self-evident that these men did not fight for the United States of America. They fought against it. They may have been warriors, but in this cause, they were not patriots. Strong words from Mayor Mitch Landrieu earlier today here at Gallier Hall. Here's another listen to what he had to say.
So before we part, let us again state clearly for all to hear. The Confederacy was on the wrong side of history and humanity. It sought to tear apart our nation and subjugate our fellow Americans to slavery. This is a history we should never forget, and one that we should never, ever again put on a pedestal to be revered. As a community, we must recognize the significance of removing New Orleans Confederate monuments. It is our acknowledgement that now is a time to take stock of and then move past a painful part of our history. Anything less would render generations of courageous struggle and soul searching a truly lost cause.
And one of the biggest criticisms the mayor has dealt with since 2015 when he came up with this idea is, why didn't you do it sooner? We all know Mitch Landrieu was first elected lieutenant governor in 2003 and again in 2007. That job oversees tourism, recreation, and parks. Also, why didn't you come up with this in your first term? And he kept coming back to the fact of, it doesn't matter when you do the right thing as long as you do the right thing. And he said in this speech today, he was elected to do what might not be popular, but what is the right thing to do. And he feels that he absolutely did it, and he laid it out in this speech. You can see the entire speech, Sulla and Scott, on our Facebook page or on any of our mobile apps. Let's send it back to you.
Travers, thank you. 2015 is when the mayor declared the 4 Confederate monuments public nuisances, clearing the way for removal. Since then, there have been legal battles, court fights, and also the question of who owns the statue, the PGT Beauregard monument at the entrance of City Park. So lots of battles involved legally in courts, on the grounds, and on the streets of New Orleans, at homes. And today it culminates as history unfolds here at Lee's Circle.
And if you're just tuning in, at 6:05, 10 minutes ago, the Robert E. Lee statue was removed from its pedestal by a crane that had been working on getting him off of there all day and now sits awaiting to be laid down on his back on that flatbed as we continue to watch. But we do need to get a check on weather because there's some weather to talk about. We've had a nice run of sunshine. Margaret, though, rain is on the way as we head into this weekend.
That's right, and I'm a little concerned about it. So here's the deal. We've got increasing rain chances for this weekend with a slow-moving cold front moving our way, and it's going to hang out along the coast or over southeast Louisiana, not only for Sunday, but for Monday and Tuesday. And that's why we have the potential that we could have a flash flood watch issued, 1 to 2 inches of rain possible for your Sunday. But keep in mind, it's not going to be an all-day rain that we're looking at. So here's what's happening now. This is the front we're watching. Tornado watch is in effect all along that frontal boundary. It's slowly going to move our way. An enhanced risk for severe storms in that area. What we're watching is this upper level low that's really destabilizing the atmosphere. That's the main weather maker with all of this moisture moving to the north. This upper level low is going to stay more to our north. So while we do have a marginal risk for severe storms, it's not a high risk like we've had to our northwest. So marginal risk for tomorrow, the potential that you could have strong gusty winds and storms, maybe even some hail. We can zoom in and look at what's happening right now. There have been a few showers, mainly to the south. You can see them from Port Sulphur over towards Lafitte. Had a little bit of rain over here by Laplace and Letcher. And there have been some showers on the north shore, but they pretty much have dissipated now. And a little bit of rain as well moving on shore over near Pearlington. So here's the big picture. And we're also noticing that we have flood warnings in effect along the Mississippi River and also for the Atchafalaya Basin. We do not have a flood warning in effect for our area, but the Mississippi River is high. Right now it's at 14.97 feet, expected to get up to 16.5 feet. That's going to be on May 28th. The city is protected up to 20 feet and flood stage for us is 17 feet. We are not expected to reach that. But we can look over at Algiers Point. We've been watching this for the past week or so, and look at all of the water that has now moved inland. And you can see there is a road, and in this area right here, often cars park, and that's where there are festivals. Not taking place now. All right, let's look at that forecast. And what we're seeing is tonight a slight chance of rain, but as you go into tomorrow, it is a 50% chance of rain. And I hate to say it, for your Sunday, we have a 100% chance of rain. Let me just step out of the way so that you can see what's happening here. Look at how that rain increases Sunday morning, especially for the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And then you've got big storms firing up on the South Shore. There will be breaks in the rain that day, so we're watching that, especially for the Seafood Festival in Belle Chase and also for Bayou Boogaloo. So here we are, we're looking at your Sunday with rain and storms possible. There's the front. It's going to linger in the area with rain chances beginning to return. Look at how warm it was today. Bogalusa 91, Hammond 90, Baton Rouge 91, over towards Houma 90 degrees. 88 was the high over at the airport. And our morning lows did not drop below 70 degrees. So we can check out our temperatures now. We're in the mid 80s. It's pretty pleasant out there. Southeast flow at 10, 15, 16 miles per hour. That breeze 40s makes it feel pretty good. Right at 9 o'clock, upper 70s, morning lows, low to the mid 70s, and then your high temperatures tomorrow climbing right there into the mid to the upper 80s. If you get more sunshine, you could pop up a little bit higher. I do expect some rain and storms in the afternoon. 100% chance of rain for Sunday. Monday, we've got a decent shot as well, along with Tuesday, and then your weather finally improving for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
All right, Margaret, thank you.
And you are taking another live look at close to the finale of what has been a very long day, starting early this morning as crews work to uproot, unbolt the statue from the pedestal, carefully strap the straps, the ropes around it, and bring it down to the flatbed. And now they are working to lay it down on its back.
Much more to come on WDSU News at 6 as we continue to watch the Robert E. Lee Monument removed.